Welcome back from all of us at Pilot Training Solutions. Today we're going to go over ground reference maneuvers and in particular the rectangular course. We will be discussing the maneuver itself to help you master it for the check ride. And let's get right to it. Ground reference maneuvers are part of the practical test standards, and you will be asked to accomplish possibly 2 or maybe all 3 during your check ride. With 10 years of experience performing state checks and check rides, I can tell you that us examiners are not looking for perfection on these maneuvers. What we're looking for is mainly your division of attention. You need to be focusing about 80% of your time outside the airplane to maintain your situational awareness, and about 20% inside, making sure you maintain the altitude and bank within the practical test standards. So, what are the limitations of the practical test standards? Well, just so you know, I put a link on the description below to the latest PTS, the Practical Test Standards, as of August 2014, and that's called FAA-S-8081-14B. You can visit the link and you can download it and print it out. What do they say? First of all, the applicant must exhibit satisfactory knowledge of the elements related to a rectangular course. Second, you select a suitable reference area. 3. You plan the maneuver as to enter a left or right pattern 600 to 1000 feet AGL at an appropriate distance from the selected reference area at a 45-degree angle to the downwind leg. 4. You apply adequate wind drift correction during the straight and turning flight to maintain a constant ground track around the rectangular reference area. 5. You divide your attention between airplane control and ground track while maintaining coordinated flight. And finally, you maintain the altitude within 100 feet and maintain your airspeed within 10 knots. Also, the maneuver must be accomplished as explained on the Airplane Flying Handbook, and that's FA-H-8083-3B. And I obviously put a link to that book as well on the description below. Before we get to the actual maneuver, let's discuss common errors students make even before starting the actual task. 1. Not accomplishing clearing turns. 2. Forgetting to do the pre-maneuver checklist. 3. Picking a suitable area for the maneuver. 4. Starting at the wrong altitude. First of all, before starting any task, you should always accomplish your clearing turns and don't ask the examiner if you should. This should be done automatically by you. Remember, the examiner is just a passenger. He has no clue. Start with a left 90-degree turn followed by a right 90-degree turn. Always start to the left because of overtaking aircraft. They're going to overtake on the right side, so if you start to the left, that would not be an issue, increasing safety. Also, before starting any task, it is fundamental that you do the pre-maneuver checklist. Again, without asking the examiner. Depending on the airplane you're flying, this can be fairly simple to quite complicated. In general, you should take a peek at your cruise checklist and see that everything is set correctly. For example, that your mixture is set to full rich, or that your carburetor heat is off or on if required by the conditions. When you pick the field, it is fairly obvious that you should try to pick something that is going to make the maneuver easy to accomplish. What is not so obvious is that the examiner will probably pull the throttle on you during one of the ground reference maneuvers to simulate an engine out. So it is fundamental to choose an area with a nice emergency field close to it, and also to keep it in sight at all times and remain in a position where you can make it back to it if and when the examiner simulates the engine failure. Not picking an emergency field will guarantee that the examiner will pull the engine out on you just to prove his point, and obviously at that point you're probably going to fail the check ride. The best altitude for these maneuvers is between 700 and 800 feet, as it will give you some wiggle room. The PTS gives you plus minus 100 feet, but if you pick 1,000 feet, you would only have plus 0 minus 100, as the PTS again states that the maneuver needs to be accomplished between 500 and 1,000 feet. Too close to 500 will give you less time and distance in an engine out emergency, and the higher you go, the harder it is to maintain the ground references where you want them. Now, let's tackle the maneuver itself. The maneuver itself is fairly easy. What you're doing is simulating a traffic pattern after all, and you've done plenty of those. First, you need to figure out where the wind is coming from. The easiest way to accomplish this is to look for some smoke, whether from a fire, a smokestack, or some other feature. In the absence of smoke, you can align yourself with a road while navigating to your field and notice which way you're drifting. Keep in mind that if your practice area is close to your airport of departure, the wind is probably going to be the same. Once you're fairly certain of the direction of the wind, you will want to enter the rectangular course at a 45 degree to the left downwind, just as you would in a standard traffic pattern. You can choose to do a right downwind, but left is safer, again because of overtaking traffic. And by the way, anything that has to do with safety and how conscious you are about it will surely please the examiner, so letting him know you will pick a left pattern because of safety will surely make him happy. And a happy examiner is a very good thing, trust me. Now, if you do not correct for the wind, this is what our maneuver would look like. The animation is showing that the airplane is drifting in the direction the wind is blowing, and obviously that would not be acceptable, and the maneuver would be considered a failed task. So, how do we correctly accomplish this task? Well, let's break down the task turn by turn. Entering 45 degrees to the downwind, we arrive at our first point of turn, in this case, the crossroads. We already know that once the turn is accomplished, we will have a left crosswind. We also know we need to crab into the wind. This means we will need to turn more than 90 degrees. How much more is determined by the wind velocity, and we will find that out during the actual leg. You're obviously not expected to know this ahead of time. What you should do is show that you are aware of the fact and that you're trying to correct for it. Also, because the wind is pushing us away from the turn, the bank needs to be steep. Let's say between 30 and 40 degrees, but make sure you do not exceed 45 degrees, as that would be considered a high-performance turn. And for high-performance maneuvers, the minimum altitude needs to be higher than 1,500 feet. On the second leg, the base leg if you want, we will establish the crab as to stay over the road. Getting to our second point of turn, the second crossroad, we will need to turn less than 90 degrees because we are already crabbing towards the turn. And because the wind is still pushing us away from the turn, we will again need a steep bank. This leg here needs no crab angle, as the wind is directly on our back. As we arrive at the next crossroad, we will turn less than 90 degrees, as the crab will be towards the right. And this time here, the wind is going to be pushing us into the turn. So we want to use a shallow bank, between 15 and 25 degrees. Again, maintain the crab to stay over the road. And by the way, the crab amount should be the same as we had for our second leg, the base leg. So if we had 20 degrees correction to the left, we will now need 20 degrees correction to the right. Finally, our last turn will be a little bit more than 90 degrees. And again, the wind is pushing us into the turn. This means we're going to need a shallow bank one more time. Pretty much. When you're downwind, the wind is on your back, you're going to have steep turns. When you're upwind, the wind is coming right at your nose, you're going to have shallow turns. Well, that's it. Just rinse and repeat. You want to repeat the track at least once, unless the examiner tells you otherwise. After the completion of the second track, exit the maneuver just as you would a traffic pattern. So either on the downwind or at a 45-degree outbound on the downwind. This maneuver is probably the easiest of the ground reference maneuvers again. We will be releasing a new video every week covering all of the ground reference maneuvers. In the meantime, if you want more tips on passing the check ride, keep in mind that we don't just offer the knowledge test prep software, which helps you ace the written test. We also have the check ride prep software, a 3-hour prep that will bring you through every possible scenario the examiner could present you with. This latest software of ours will give you the confidence you need to guarantee you will pass your practical test on the first try. If you still need to pass also your knowledge test, then you might be interested in the all-in-one package, which will give you access to the knowledge test software for PC and Mac. It will also give you access to the online software for iPad and Android, and it will also give you access to the online testing software. But best of all, it gives you access to the check ride prep software absolutely free. Visit PassFAExams.com and see how we make pilot test taking fun and easy. Until next time, we at Pilot Training Solutions wish you all happy flying and blue skies.